The millionaire's shocking bet with a poor girl ends when his son speaks up unexpectedly. The cold Manhattan air bit through the expensive fabrics draped over the glittering crowd inside the grand ballroom. Crystal chandeliers flickered like distant stars above a sea of sharply dressed faces. But Alexander Grant stood apart. A king in a castle of glass and steel. His sharp eyes scanned the room, not once faltering. The buzz of whispered deals and clinking glasses faded into the back of his mind, replaced by a heavy unrest that no dollar sign could fix. Tonight should have been just another night, another charity event, another line added to his list of triumphs. But fate had other plans. Lily Thompson moved like a spark against the polished floor, her worn hands clutching a simple clutch, her eyes fierce with a mix of struggle and defiance. She came from nowhere, a world so far from Alexander's own golden towers. The room seemed to shrink around them when their eyes met, and in scandal, insanity, boldness born from boredom, Lily's jaw clenched, her chest tightened, breath quickening, the weight of the room's stairs crushing her like iron bars. Yet her voice came out steady, fierce against the silence. "You don't know what I'm capable of. Let's see who's right." Whispers erupted. "He can't be serious. That's reckless." Some faces twisted in shock. Others leaned in, hungry for chaos. The bet wasn't just money. It was everything. Hope, pride, futures hanging by a thread. Alexander's calm mask flickered ever so slightly, revealing that restless storm inside. His trembling hands hid beneath tailored sleeves, but everyone saw the tension. Then, just as the weight of the wager pressed down like a vice, a small voice cut through the growing chaos. Sharp, clear, unexpected. "Dad." All eyes whipped to the side. Ethan, Alexander's teenage son, stepped forward, breath catching in his throat, eyes wide and fierce in a way no one had seen before. The crowd silenced instantly, senses straining to catch the words that could unravel everything. No one knew what Ethan would say, but the question hung thick in the air, like smoke choking a fire. Could this moment undo the bet, or tear apart more than just the wealthy and the poor? The room held its breath, waiting. The stakes suddenly felt heavier, darker, and the night, cold and restless, seemed to lean in closer, hungry to see what comes next. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. And while you're at it, leave that powerful like. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know each incredible person who is part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Dad. The room snapped to attention. Heads turned sharply toward Ethan. His voice was trembling, but his eyes blazed with something fierce, something raw. Alexander's face tightened. "Ethan." "Not now," he said, low but firm. "No." Ethan pushed forward, voice louder, harder. "You don't get to decide this time." Whispers surged through the crowd like wildfire. Phones lifted, flashes blinking. The glittering ballroom, once a sea of polished smiles, shook with electric tension. Ethan's gaze locked on Lily, unwavering. "You think this is some game, but you don't know what you're betting on." He turned to his father. "You want to prove who's better? Fine. But you owe her the truth." Silence, waiting. And then an assistant stumbled in, the sharp edge of panic clear on her face. "Mr. Grant," she gasped, "there's something you need to see. It's urgent." Alexander's eyebrows flickered. His sharp eyes narrowed. "Show me." A tablet was handed to him. The screen glowed bright, full of grainy surveillance footage. The crowd leaned in as Alexander tapped play. The video showed Lily, but not just the defiant, fiery woman standing before them. It showed her in a hospital room. A tiny baby, barely breathing, surrounded by machines. Lily's hands trembled as she held the fragile life close, her eyes full of desperate hope and raw terror. Then the camera zoomed out. Shock twisted the air into a dim corner where a man was watching. Alexander. The man looked weak, almost ghostly, but the name flashed on screen. John. Alexander's breath caught. John, his older brother, presumed dead for years. Murmurs erupted. "No way. That's impossible." Ethan's voice cracked through it all. "He's alive. And that baby, that's my sister." Gasps flooded the room. Faces paled. Alexander's jaw went rigid, hands clenching as if to crush the tablet. Lily's composure shattered for a split second. Her eyes darted toward Alexander, then back to Ethan. Alexander's voice wavered, barely a whisper. "John is dead. I buried him." Ethan shook his head. "You buried the truth instead." Lily's voice broke through the chaos. "That's my daughter, Alexander. She's your niece. You owe her your silence, your money, your truth, not bets." The weight dropped, heavy and sharp. Alexander's world cracked open, spilling years of secrets, lies, and buried pain across that ballroom floor. "Why didn't you tell me?" Ethan demanded, eyes wild. Alexander's facade shattered. His eyes burned with shame, fear, something like defeat. No one moved. The chandeliers flickered uncertainly, as if the light itself wasn't sure what had just been revealed. The bet, so arrogant, so risky, suddenly felt meaningless against the secret that threatened to destroy everything. Family, pride, power. Lily's face softened, not in victory, but in sorrow. Maybe some bets can't be won. The room held its breath, caught in the hangover of shock. And then, from the back, a sharp crash cracked like a gunshot. A scream. Something, or someone, had fallen. The crowd turned. The night wasn't done. Not by far. Not yet. The crash echoed like thunder, slicing through the thick silence. Glass shattered. Chairs scraped harshly against the marble floor. A shout cut the air. All heads turned, eyes wide and wild. At the far end of the ballroom, near the grand staircase, a woman lay collapsed, trembling, and sprawled across the tiles. Her silver gown was torn, stained red, bright and raw against the cold white stone. "Mrs. Grant!" someone gasped, rushing forward. Alexander's blood ran cold. His breath hitched. His chest tightened as if a fist squeezed deep inside. No one had noticed the woman slipping quietly through the crowd. Evelyn Grant, Alexander's wife, Ethan's mother. The picture of the perfect family they all thought they knew. She lay there, eyes fluttering open, face pale as death. Her lips moved, barely a whisper. "It's the baby. The baby's gone." A heavy silence drifted over the room. Staring eyes watched the scene unfold. Shock twisting every face as if the ground beneath them cracked open. Lily's breath caught. Her hands clenched her clutch so tightly her knuckles turned white. Ethan froze, face a storm of confusion and terror. Alexander dropped the tablet with a dull thud, his world crashing down around him again. He knelt beside Evelyn, voice trembling. "What do you mean she's gone? What happened?" Evelyn's hand jerked weakly toward the screen, still glowing in Alexander's other hand. The video of Lily holding the fragile baby. "They took her," Evelyn whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "The hospital, the doctors. Something's wrong. The baby was strong, then disappeared. I heard whispers about who she really is." Alexander's jaw clenched tight. Rage bubbled beneath his skin, cold and sharp. The crowd murmured, hushed voices, spilling secrets and fears. Suddenly, from the back of the room, a man stepped forward swiftly, one no one expected. From the shadows, John, the man in the video, the lost brother. But this wasn't the weak, ghostly figure they'd seen on the screen. This John stood tall and steady, eyes cold and steady as steel. "I'm here to fix this," he said, voice calm, but cutting through the noise like a knife. The room froze again. Alexander's face drained. "How? Why are you here?" John's gaze lingered on Lily, then on Evelyn, then on Ethan. "Because this isn't just about a bet. It's about a war you're all caught in. A family secret deeper than you know. And this baby," he said, voice dropping low, "she isn't just your niece. She's the key to everything I've been running from, and what they want back." Lily's eyes widened. Ethan's fists clenched. Alexander's heart battered against his ribs, cold sweat slicking his skin. John reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope, a worn, yellowed parchment folded carefully. "Inside this," John said, voice sharper now, "is the truth no one wanted to see. The reason I disappeared, the reason your family, your empire, is built on a lie, and why this night will change everything." The seconds hung, thick and heavy. Then Evelyn gasped. "No, it can't be." John pressed the envelope into Alexander's trembling hands. He whispered, "Read it. But be ready. Once you do, there's no going back." The ballroom fell silent. every heart pounding. Everyone knew this story wasn't just about money or pride anymore. It was about secrets sharper than knives, about betrayals deeper than blood, and above all, about a truth so dark it could tear them apart forever. Alexander's hands shook as he unfolded the paper, and as his eyes scanned the first lines, a single thought blasted through his mind like a bullet. This can't be real. But it was. Because the letter didn't just expose a secret. It revealed a new identity. One that shattered everything Alexander thought he knew about himself. "I'm not who you think I am," he whispered, voice cracking. Lily stared, breath caught tight. Ethan felt his world spin faster. John smiled coldly, eyes glittering with quiet satisfaction. And the question that slammed into the room like a rogue wave: who is Alexander Grant, really? The night had just begun, and no one was safe from what was coming next. Alexander's hands trembled as the worn paper slipped between his fingers. The words seemed to burn into his skin, sharp and unyielding. His breath hitched, chest tightening so hard it felt like it might crush him. The room held its breath with him. "I'm not who you think I am," he whispered again, voice cracking, eyes wide as if staring into a nightmare he couldn't wake from. Lily's fierce eyes softened, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her face. Ethan's fists clenched so hard his knuckles went white. John's cold smirk didn't waver in the dim light, as if he held all the cards and the power. Then, before anyone could say another word, the silence shredded. A piercing scream sliced through the air. All heads snapped toward the grand staircase where Evelyn still lay, pale and shaking. "Help me," she gasped. It's not her, the baby. It's... Her words stumbled and then stopped. Suddenly her gaze fixed on Alexander with a wild, desperate intensity. "Alexander, you've known all along." The crowd shifted, murmurs swelling. Alexander's face drained, heart slamming. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. His son stepped forward, jaw tight, expecting something. But Evelyn wasn't finished. "She wasn't just a child lost," Evelyn whispered, voice fragile. "She was a secret you buried deeper than John, a secret you promised never to speak." Then came the thud, a heavy, sickening fall. Evelyn collapsed sideways, eyes rolling back. The room gasped, chaos erupting. Alexander rushed to her side, heart pounding like a drum. His hands shook as he caught hers, searching for a pulse, rising and falling with agonizing slowness. A voice screamed from the back, "Call 911, now!" Phones whipped out, frantic calls started. The glittering party blurred around Alexander. His mind spun. Until then, nothing prepared him for what came next. John moved easily through the crowd, eyes locked on Alexander like a hawk, calm but deadly. He knelt beside the crumpled woman, snapping open his jacket, revealing a hidden badge glinting sharply in the chandelier light. "FBI," John said flatly. "Mr. Grant." The room froze. "Alexander," John said quietly, "you're under investigation, not just for your family secrets, but for a series of disappearances. Children connected to your foundation." The breath left the room. Laughter, disbelief, confusion dimmed into ice-cold fear. "What?" Alexander gasped, pulling back. "That's insane!" John's eyes bored into him. "Is it? Because the letter tells a different story. You were never the heir to a fortune. At least not honestly. You're the product of a twisted deal. And these missing children? Part of it." Lily gasped, stepping back as whispers turned to shouts. Ethan's face went pale. "Dad, what are you saying?" Alexander's hands dropped the letter, a shard of panic wrapping tight around his heart. The room swirled in colors and sounds. He felt dismantled, exposed. Suddenly, a soft whimper caught everyone's attention. A faint cry coming from the grand staircase. Eyes shifted, and there, just tucked beneath a velvet curtain, was a small bundle. Fetal warmth, fragile breaths. A baby. Lily's clutch fell to the floor as she dashed over, hands trembling as she picked up the tiny life. The baby's pulse was faint, but real. Alexander's gaze locked with Ethan's. The truth slammed hard against his chest. This child, the missing link, and then the twist that shattered everything. The baby opened her eyes and whispered, clear as a bell, "Daddy." The room went deaf. Questions exploded like gunfire. Who was this child? And how was she alive after Evelyn's words? After the promises of silence? Alexander's world wasn't crumbling anymore. It was erupting, and no one knew where the shattered pieces would land. The night had just become a nightmare, and the nightmare was just beginning. The baby's whispered word hung in the air, sharp and impossible. "Daddy." Everything froze. Lily's hands trembled around the tiny bundle, her breath catching, eyes wide with hope and horror, all tangled up. Ethan's face went pale. His fists clenched so tight it looked like they might snap. Alexander's heart slammed against his ribs like a wild drum. Breath short and ragged. The crowd was silent, shock anchoring every soul to the marble floor. Then, a sound. A sharp, metallic click, like a gun cocking. Heads whipped to the grand staircase. A man stood there, a stranger no one had seen before, dressed all in black. His eyes were cold, hard, a blade cutting through the stunned silence. "Enough," he said, slow and certain. People stepped back, whispers turning to gasps. Alexander's hands shook, gripping the baby, as if she might slip away. The man's gaze settled on Alexander. "You don't know me," he said, "but I know you." A brutal laugh shook Alexander's chest, the sound raw and hollow. The man pulled a badge from his coat, flashing it in the chandelier's glow. "CIA," he said flatly. More murmurs. Phones raised faster now. Before anyone could blink, the man moved forward, spotlighting Alexander like prey. "You're the reason this nightmare started," he said, voice low but sure. Alexander's breath hitched, sweat slicking his temples. "What are you talking about?" he croaked. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn photo. He let it fall to the floor, an instant freeze of faces. A younger Alexander, beside a woman no one recognized. The woman's eyes were cold, threatening. Her name, the agent said, was Madeline. The room shifted. John's eyes narrowed, a flicker of confusion flashing. Lily's mouth parted, breath catching. The agent spoke on, cutting deep. There was no accident with those kids disappearing. He hissed the words. It was a cover-up. Alexander's head snapped up, voice terrified. No, you don't understand. Yes, I do, the agent interrupted. The truth is, you weren't the heir born in a golden cradle. You were a pawn, bought and sold by men who wanted power. Madeline was part of it. The woman you see there, he looked at John. She was your real mother. The room gasped, hundreds of jaws dropping. John staggered, disbelief twisting his face. Alexander's knees buckled, the baby nearly slipping from his arms. Your family wasn't built just on lies, the man went on. It was built on betrayal and stolen identities. A low sob escaped Lily. Evelyn, still weak at the base of the stairs, opened her eyes, trembling. Madeline, she whispered, voice cracking. No, Alexander breathed. She died years ago. The agent's eyes went colder. Not dead. They erased her, buried her in shadows. He pointed to the baby. This child is her bloodline. The proof. The baby's fingers curled around Alexander's thumb. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently. A deafening pop echoed through the hall. The chandeliers trembled before crashing down, a blinding spray of glass raining onto the marble. Screams cut the chaos. Alexander threw himself over the baby, shielding her. Glass sliced his arm, hot blood blooming instantly. Ethan shielded his mother, who groaned behind him. The agent shouted, "Get down, everyone! Get down!" Cold panic sifted through the crowd as dust filled the air. The stranger's gaze locked on Alexander, hard as flint. Your secret isn't safe anymore. Not while she's alive. A heavy silence swallowed the room again. Then, soft but deadly, a whisper from the shadows. "Dad?" The child's voice pierced the smoke, but it wasn't the baby's. A woman stepped through, limping but steady, eyes blazing, face unrecognizable, twisted by rage and sorrow. "Stop lying, Alexander," she said. The room gasped. "Stop pretending you're innocent." Her voice cracked like glass. "I'm Madeline." The world shattered. The family, the lies, the bets, it all exploded into dust. And no one knew if anything would ever be the same. Who was she? How was this possible? Alexander stared, frozen, his world burning down, piece by heartbreaking piece. And the nightmare? It was just starting. Madeline's voice cut through the chaos like a knife. "I'm Madeline." The room went still, like the air had been sucked out all at once. Alexander stood frozen, heart hammering so hard it felt like it would burst through his chest. His eyes locked on the woman, whose features were twisted in years of pain and fury. The story he thought he knew shattered, piece by piece. But then, before anyone could breathe, her eyes flickered strangely. Something in that fierce gaze changed. Suddenly, her mouth curved into a slow, cold smile, and from nowhere, a sharp click echoed again. Everyone turned. A flash of silver, a gun. Madeline raised the weapon, aiming straight at Alexander's chest. "Don't move," she hissed. "This ends now." Gasps erupted. The crowd scattered back, panic spreading fast. Alexander's mind raced, heart ice cold. His arms instinctively lifted, shielding the baby still cradled close. Ethan's eyes flared with wild fear. His mother gasped behind him. But then the impossible happened. That baby, the fragile one with the whispered "Daddy," twitched in Alexander's arms. Her tiny hand shot straight up, and with a strength no one expected, she grabbed the gun. The weapon twisted sharply. A loud bang cracked through the ballroom. Madeline screamed, a raw, inhuman sound that froze everyone. She staggered back, clutching her shoulder, eyes wild and confused. The baby's dark eyes glowed, an eerie, unnatural light flickering in the dim chaos. People shouted, backing away. Lily froze, her hands tight on the clutch, breath caught between horror and disbelief. Ethan's face drained of color, stepping forward despite the panic. Alexander stared, utterly stunned. The baby smiled. But it wasn't a baby smile. It was something old, something cold. "Not mine," she whispered. Clear, steady, deep beyond reason. The room trembled. John's eyes narrowed sharply. What the hell? Madeline scrambled for the gun again, but dropped it. Her hand shook violently, face twisting in pain, and something darker. Fear? Rage? "You lied," she spat, voice cracking. "All of you. It's her, not my daughter. The one who was meant to disappear." Alexander's breath hitched. His arms trembled around the baby, now glowing faintly, almost like firelight caught in the dark. Silence pressed tight. Then, crashing through it, a voice, cold and low, not the baby's. Standing in the shadows, stepped a new figure. Tall, broad, face hidden under a hood. The room screamed with confusion. "Who are you?" Ethan demanded, voice shaking but firm. The stranger pulled down the hood. The light hit, and Alexander's blood ran ice cold. It was him, Alexander, but not the man everyone knew. This one's face was older, worn by shadows, hardened and cruel. His eyes glowed the same eerie light as the baby's. The room gasped. "This changes everything," the man said, voice like gravel. "Because what you see here," he gestured to the glowing child, "is the real future, the real legacy." Lily's mouth fell open. Ethan's knees nearly buckled. Alexander stared, trembling, heart-breaking. What is this?" he whispered, voice barely a breath. The dark Alexander smiled, slow and twisted. "I'm you, and only one of us can survive tonight." The baby reached up again, a tiny hand resting on the dark version of Alexander's face. The glow pulsed stronger. The air sparkled with electricity. The grand ballroom froze in time, and one terrifying question hung heavy in the charged silence. Which Alexander is the real one? And what does the baby want with him? No one moved. No one breathed. The nightmare wasn't just beginning. It had doubled in darkness. And nobody was ready for the truth that was still to come. The room held its breath. Silence crushed the air. The baby's glowing eyes locked on the shadowed Alexander, the one who wasn't supposed to exist. Then, without warning, the dark Alexander stepped forward, slow and deliberate, his grin sharp and dangerous. The baby reached up again, hand resting gently on his cheek, brightness pulsing between them like a slow heartbeat. Alexander, the one holding the child, felt the whole ballroom shift beneath his feet. His chest tightened so fiercely, he barely caught his own breath. "Who? What are you?" he whispered, voice cracking like dry wood. Before the other Alexander could answer, a sudden, icy chill swept through the room. The chandeliers flickered violently, casting long, twisted shadows across the faces frozen in shock. Then, boom! From above, the ceiling thundered as a section cracked open, spilling shards of broken plaster down in a shimmering, deadly rain. A figure dropped through the hole, falling fast, a woman, eyes wild, arms flailing. She landed hard at the edge of the crowd, rolling and coming up on trembling knees. "Stop!" she screamed, voice breaking through the chaos like a spotlight. Everyone froze. Even the glass-heart crowd was caught off guard. The baby wailed, a piercing sound, shattering whatever silence remained. The woman looked up, drenched in sweat and dirt, her gaze cutting through the crowd as if hunting a ghost. "Alexander." Her voice cracked, raw and desperate. Tears streamed down her face as she crawled toward the man holding the baby. "I am," she gasped. "The real Madeline." The room gasped again, but this time the air trembled with a terrible weight. Alexander's heart hit rock bottom. "Yes," she whispered, "the one you buried in your lies, the one you thought long dead." The baby's glow dimmed as if drained by the words, and then she threw back her head, vomited a glittering stream of blood that spilled over the marble floor, red, thick, and dark. The crowd recoiled in horror. The woman's laughter cracked the space like ice breaking. "I don't just hold the truth. I am the truth." Her eyes burned furious and alive. "Told you Madeline was gone? A lie you told yourself to sleep easy." The real Madeline rose unsteadily, blood dripping from her fingers, her gaze swinging cold to the glowing baby. "That isn't your daughter. She's me." Whispers erupted in disbelief. Lily stumbled back, clutching her clutch like a lifeline. Ethan's knees buckled. He grabbed his mother's arm, gasping. Alexander's arms loosened, the baby slipping for a terrifying moment before the dark Alexander's hand caught her. "No!" Alexander cried, voice raw. "You're lying!" But Madeline laughed, bitter and cruel. "Look around," she hissed. "The one you call your son, your wife, your perfect life?" Her voice dipped lower, deadly. "They were never real." The crowd froze, disbelief wrapping tight around their throats. Ethan blinked, face blanching. "Mom? Dad?" His voice cracked like a fragile thread breaking. The baby's eerie glow flickered. Dark Alexander's eyes narrowed, stepping between Madeline and the shaken father. But Madeline raised a trembling hand, and in an instant, the baby's form shimmered, twisting and warping. Her glow erupted into blinding white light. The room shielded their eyes. When the light died down, the baby was gone. In her place, a woman stood, no longer tiny and fragile, but tall, fierce, and horrifyingly familiar. The woman's eyes locked on Alexander. "You don't know me," she whispered, voice cold and strange. "Because I'm not a baby at all." She stepped forward, and the world seemed to tilt. "I'm you." Alexander stumbled, breath ragged. The woman before them smiled. A smile not his, but something darker, deeper. "I am what you buried. The part of you you swore to forget." The silence was suffocating. Then a soft voice, Lily's, barely above a whisper. What is happening?" Madeline's laughter filled the space again. "It's time you knew the truth, Grant family." She pointed at the baby-turned woman. "Not a daughter, not a niece. She's the shadow you cast, because the real nightmare was never outside. It was inside you all along." The ballroom spun. Whispers turned to screams. Questions tore at the edges of every mind. And Alexander, his hands shaking, heart falling apart, realized nothing was real. The game had changed, but the rules, nobody knew. Who was this woman, the baby's true form? What part of Alexander was lurking in the dark? And how much of the life they had believed in was just a lie? The night was far from over, and the nightmare? Well, it had just taken a turn darker than anyone thought possible. And now, there was no going back. The ballroom trembled in stunned silence. The woman who had been the baby seconds ago stood tall, her eyes dark, her smile cold and strange. Alexander's breath hitched. Everything in him screamed disbelief. Lily's voice barely broke through the thick air. What just happened?" The crowd pressed closer, faces pale, eyes wide like hunted animals. Ethan's hands gripped his mother's arm so tight the skin blushed red. Suddenly, the lights flickered again. Phones shone like fireflies as whispers grew into frantic murmurs. Then, a sharp crack from behind the heavy velvet drapes. The crowd spun. Another figure stepped out. She was small, hunched, with shaking hands, but something about her pulled every eye. Her white coat dusted with dirt, her face unrecognizable. And then she spoke, a voice that cracked like old wood breaking. "I'm sorry I'm late." Gasps sliced through the room. Alexander's heart slammed. "Charlotte?" he whispered. The woman, Charlotte, nodded slowly, eyes fixed on him. "I know this isn't easy to believe," she said, her voice barely a breath. "Because none of this was supposed to be seen. None of this was meant for your eyes." The crowd froze. The shadows thickened. Alexander stepped forward, mouth dry. "Who sent you? How do you even know?" She raised a hand, trembling but firm. "I was part of it," Charlotte said, voice heavy. "The experiments, the lies, the cover-up. The same ones that erased Madeline, your mother, your wife, your nightmare." A low murmur raced. The word experiments hung like poison. Charlotte's eyes burned into Alexander's. "But there's more," she said, breath catching. Her fingers clutched a thin file, papers thick with secrets. "You think you know the nightmare? You don't." She took a step closer, calm, deadly. "I'm the one who created it." Stunned silence. Lily gasped. Ethan's face drained. Alexander staggered back. What are you saying?" Charlotte's smile was bitter. "I built her, the baby, the shadow woman, the dark you, all of it." Whispers died, replaced by gasps sharp as knives. "This wasn't just a family feud," Charlotte continued. "It was an experiment, born from greed and madness. DNA tampering, mind control, identity theft. You, Alex, weren't born. You were made." The words hit Alexander like a punch to the gut. Made, not born. A product. A lie wrapped in flesh. Lily stepped forward, voice shaking but loud. "What did you do to them? To us?" Charlotte's gaze fell on Evelyn, still weak and pale near the stairs. "I erased your past, Evelyn." Evelyn gasped, shaking her head. "No, it's not true." Charlotte's voice dropped. "Yes, you're not who you think you are. None of you are." A sharp intake of breath from the crowd. Cameras flashed wildly. Ethan's voice cracked in disbelief. "Mom? Dad?" Charlotte's eyes darkened. "Alex, the real nightmare started when you all swallowed the lies. The foundation, the charity, the disappearances. It was never about charity. It was a cover for control. And the baby? That future? She's the last failed experiment." The room spun. Alexander's knees buckled. His hands trembled uncontrollably. "No," he whispered. "This isn't real." Charlotte raised a hand, pulling an old photo from the file. "A boy, your real self. A son born away from this madness." She showed a scrappy child's face, wild eyes staring straight into the soul. "That boy was me," she said, "as was he." She pointed to another face in the blurred image, a younger, freer Alexander. The room gasped so loud it shook the chandeliers. They split us, Charlotte said softly, took pieces of what should have been a family and turned us into weapons. A scream erupted from Evelyn as she tried to stand. "Stop it!" Alexander shouted, voice cracking. But Charlotte shook her head. The real Madeline wasn't dead, but trapped, silenced, replaced. She looked at the glowing woman who once was a baby, the dark shadow. She is not your daughter. She's the key, the weapon, the monster you never wanted to face. A heavy silence swallowed the room. Then, slowly the baby-turned woman's eyes flicked. A faint smile teased the corner of her lips, and her voice, cold and sure, echoed through the shattered night. "I am everything you hidden from, and I'm coming back." The ground shifted beneath them all, because now the nightmare wasn't something you could run from. It was inside and living. The question slammed hard into the cold air. Who were they, all of them, really running from? And who would survive when the real truth came to light? The crowd hung frozen, breaths caught in chests, eyes locked on the woman who had just transformed before them. The strange glow that had faded from the baby now clung like a shadow clinging to the tall figure. Silence was thick, heavy, broken only by Lily's soft, shaky voice. "What is this?" she whispered, voice barely steady. Ethan's hand gripped his mother's arm tighter, his knuckles white as his chest rose and fell like a storm. Alexander tried to steady himself, but the weight in his chest was crushing. His gaze darted between the strange woman, this shadow of himself, and the mess of shattered truths crumpled around them. Then, before anyone could move, a sharp snap echoed. Heads whipped toward the grand staircase where the party had started to unravel. A second, her eyes frantic, her breath hitching like she'd run a mile uphill. "Wait! You're all wrong!" she cried, voice breaking. Everyone fell eerily quiet. Alexander's eyes pinned on her. "Who are you?" She swallowed hard, tears glimmering. "I'm Emily Grant." Whispers rustled through the room like dry leaves. "Grant?" someone whispered. Ethan's jaw clenched. "No one told me about you," he said, voice tight. Emily took a desperate step forward, heart pounding loud enough for everyone to hear. "I was taken, kept hidden. The real daughter, the one who vanished before anyone else even knew." The room spun, a hush of disbelief. Alexander's face, pale, sweat purling down his forehead. "Hidden? Why?" he demanded, voice hoarse. Her eyes filled with pain. "Because none of this, the money, the lies, the experiments, started with you. It started with me." A cold gasp rose from the crowd. She collapsed forward, clutching at the rail. "You think you were made? You think I'm a monster?" she sobbed, voice cracking. "No, you were the shadow I left behind." The room blurred. Lily's clutch dropped again. Ethan's knees wobbled. Alexander reached out, but stopped himself. Emily looked up with a broken smile. They hid me away to cover up what really happened, what truly destroyed us. Her voice was a knife now, cutting through more than the tension. And the baby, the shadow woman, ... that wasn't some experiment. That's me, but fractured. A split soul. Not your daughter. Your sister. Heat rushed into Alexander's face, anger and horror mixing so fast it made his head spin. Why? The crowd asked, unspoken but thunderous. Emily swallowed, eyes blazing with something fierce. Because the truth? The deepest, darkest secret? It's that none of you ever existed alone. She drew a shaky breath, voice dropping. We're not just family. We're fragments. Pieces of one broken life, torn apart and spread to feed lies and power. Suddenly, panic shattered the room again. The ballroom doors slammed open with a thunderous roar. 2 more figures entered, striding fast, faces hidden beneath dark hoods. The crowd gasped. John pushed forward, eyes sharp. The first hood pulled back. A man revealed, tail shaking, eyes wild but unmistakably real. Emily's right, he gasped. You all, we all, were created. The second figure dropped his hood, and the ballroom froze. Alexander's breath hitched. The man looked just like him. Same eyes, same hard jaw. But this man's face was fractured, scarred across the cheek, raw and bloodied. I'm the original, the scarred man said, voice low, pounding in the silence. You are copies, shadows, puppets trapped by their own lies. A wave of murmurs crashed. Copies? Original? This is insane. Alexander's head spun. His heart pounded so loud he thought it would burst. You mean none of us are real? The scarred man nodded, pain and rage cracking his voice. We were all carved from a single soul, experiment after experiment, the charity, the foundation. It was a cage built not to help, but to hide me. Suddenly, Ethan's face blanched, voice a whisper. What is this? Before Alexander could answer, the doors behind the newcomers slammed shut. No one moved. Then, a chilling, cold voice rose from the darkness. Welcome to the truth you never wanted. And the lights died. Darkness swallowed the grand ballroom whole. 1,000 beating hearts thrummed into the abyss. And the nightmare that had only just begun turned into something no one could escape. Who was real? Who was the lie? And when the light returned, what would be left standing? The ballroom was a storm of sounds, crashing glass, gasps, frantic whispers. Shadows moved like ghosts under the flickering lights. Alexander clutched the file, his hands shaking so badly, the papers threatened to slip away. His chest hammered, a wild beat against ribs that felt too tight. The real Madeline, the woman bleeding at his feet, the shadow child who had burned through every lie. And now, Emily, the hidden daughter, and John, the scarred original, and the dark Alexander, the broken mirror of himself. They were all pieces of a rot that ran too deep to fix. A silence crashed over the crowd as the power surged back. The chandeliers hummed to life, sparkling over faces pale with shock and fear. Alexander looked around, the faces of the people he thought he knew, now strangers in the same nightmare. "Enough," he said, voice raw and hoarse. He stepped forward, eyes burning with something fierce. "This ends tonight." He turned to Madeline, breathing hard. "You're not my enemy anymore." Madeline laughed, bitter but fading. "You never knew who I was." "No," Alexander said, voice breaking. "But I'm ready to find out." Emily's tears glistened as she took a shaky step forward. John nodded stiffly, the scars on his face softening with relief. Lily, still clutching her bag, met Alexander's gaze, a silent plea not to let this spiral out of control. A long breath escaped Alexander's lips. "We fix this together. No more lies." The baby woman, the shadow, watched them quietly. Then, without warning, the eerie glow faded completely, making her just another lost soul in a ruined ballroom. From the back, Evelyn rose slowly, her pale face stronger somehow. "I want to believe," she whispered, "but the truth will hurt before it heals." The crowd started to move, some shaking heads, others holding hands, looking lost but alive. Alexander took the baby in his arms again. The fragile pulse was steady now, a flicker of hope in the madness. He looked at Ethan, eyes full of apology and something like hope. "We rebuild," he promised. Outside, the first light of dawn crept through the tall windows, a slow, cold wash over broken glass and shattered dreams. But maybe the sun could shine on this mess. Maybe there was a chance, buried deep beneath the chaos. And maybe, just maybe, the real nightmare was over. Or was it? A faint whisper trailed through the air, soft, merely lost. "Daddy." Alexander's heart slammed. He turned. But the baby's eyes, once glowing, were dark and empty now. The question hung in the dawn light. What did that really mean? And who was left to answer? The night had ended. But the story? It was far from over. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss a single twist or secret this channel has waiting. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button right now. Let the algorithm know you're here. Flood the comments with your thoughts, your shock, your theories about what just happened. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who have to see how it ends. Only true fans get how big this is. You're not just watching, you're part of this story. So hit subscribe, hit like, and start the conversation now.